What if every glass of water you have ever drunk was missing the one thing Jesus never overlooked? Millions of people pray before meals. Others simply whisper amen. But almost no one has ever asked what happened before the blessing itself. Ancient Aramaic tradition preserved a sequence that prepared the body, the mind, and the spirit before water ever touched the lips. It was not a ritual of superstition. It was a way of entering a different inner state. The surprising part is that this practice was never centered on one sacred word. It unfolded through 4 distinct Aramaic expressions, each carrying a different purpose. Together they formed a living sequence that transformed an ordinary act into a conscious encounter with a creator. Most people have never heard these words because they were never translated as a complete practice. Fragments remain scattered through ancient traditions, while the original sequence slowly disappeared from everyday teaching. Tonight, we are going to restore that sequence exactly as it was intended to unfold. Not all at once, one word at a time. Because each one prepares you for the next. And only when all 4 are finally brought together will you understand why Jesus never treated water as something ordinary. Stay with me until the end, because the 4th word changes the meaning of the previous 3 in a way very few people have ever considered. Water is the simplest substance we encounter every single day. We wash with it, cook with it, and drink it without giving much thought to what happens in those quiet moments between lifting the vessel and taking the first sip. Yet throughout the ancient world, water was never viewed as merely physical. It represented life, renewal, purification, and the invisible connection between heaven and earth. Before modern science began exploring its extraordinary properties, the people who spoke Aramaic already approached water with profound reverence. For Jesus, every ordinary moment had the potential to reveal a deeper spiritual reality. The Gospels repeatedly show him using familiar elements: bread, light, seeds, vineyards, wind, and water too reveal eternal truths. Nothing was insignificant. The visible world constantly reflected the invisible one. Water, therefore, became much more than something that satisfied physical thirst. It became a reminder that the human soul also longs to receive something that cannot be seen. This understanding was deeply rooted in the language Jesus spoke. Aramaic is unlike modern languages because its words are not merely definitions. Each expression carries movement, relationship, emotion, and experience within a single sound. Speaking an Aramaic word was never simply communicating information. It was participating in a living reality. That is why translators often struggled to express its full depth using Greek, Latin, or English vocabulary. As centuries passed, many practices survived only in fragments. Individual words appeared in isolated passages, while the complete sequence that once united them slowly faded from common memory. What remained were beautiful prayers, but often disconnected from the living progression that originally prepared the heart before speaking them. The words themselves were never intended to stand alone. Each one opened the way for the next, like stepping stones, leading toward a deeper awareness of God's presence. That is why tonight we will not rush. If all 4 words were revealed at once, their meaning would become little more than information. But Jesus rarely taught that way. He unfolded truth gradually, allowing each insight to prepare the listener for the next revelation. We will follow that same pattern. The first word does not bless the water. It prepares the person. Only after the person changes can the blessing truly begin. Everything begins with a single Aramaic word, not a prayer, not a petition, not even a blessing. The first word is Ephatha, pronounced Ephatha. Its simplest translation is "be open." Yet those 2 English words barely scratch the surface of what the original Aramaic conveys. The Gospel of Mark, chapter 7, preserves this remarkable moment. A man who could neither hear nor speak is brought before Jesus. Instead of delivering a long prayer or performing an elaborate ceremony, Jesus looks toward heaven, sighs deeply, and speaks one Aramaic word that the Gospel writer intentionally leaves untranslated. Immediately, the man's ears are opened, his tongue is released, and he begins speaking clearly. This detail is extraordinary because the Gospel preserves the original Aramaic sound rather than replacing it with a Greek equivalent. It suggests that the word itself carried a significance beyond simple translation. Early believers understood that its power was not only in its definition, but in the state of openness it invited. Ancient Aramaic spirituality viewed openness as the beginning of every sacred encounter. A closed heart cannot receive wisdom. A distracted mind cannot perceive truth. A fearful spirit cannot recognize the quiet movements of God. Before asking for guidance, healing, provision, or peace, one first became inwardly available to receive. Imagine holding a vessel with its lid tightly sealed. No matter how pure the water is, nothing can enter. Ephatha removes that lid not from the vessel in your hands, but from the hidden places within your own heart. This is why the sequence begins here. Before water is blessed, before gratitude is expressed, before any sacred words are spoken, the one speaking becomes open. Only then can the blessing become more than a habit repeated from memory. It becomes an experience. There is a deeper layer behind what you have just discovered. If you feel called to continue this journey, the complete study guide is waiting for you through the link in the pinned comment. The next word does not open the heart. It teaches what the opened heart is meant to do next. The second word in this ancient sequence is Baruch, pronounced Baruch. Most people recognize it as meaning blessed, but in Aramaic, its meaning reaches much deeper than a simple wish for good fortune. Baruch describes the act of drawing divine abundance into ordinary life. It is the conscious recognition that everything received ultimately flows from the Creator. Throughout the Scriptures, blessings were rarely spoken as casual expressions. They marked moments when heaven and earth were intentionally brought into harmony. Before bread was broken, before meals were shared, before journeys began, blessing was an acknowledgement that life itself was a sacred gift rather than a human possession. When Jesus gave thanks before feeding the multitudes, before the Last Supper, and during many ordinary moments recorded in the Gospels, gratitude always preceded multiplication. The Gospel writers emphasize that he first blessed what was already present before anything extraordinary occurred. This simple pattern reveals a profound spiritual principle that still speaks today. Notice the sequence carefully. The first word, Ephatha, opened the heart. Only after that inner opening came Baruch. This order matters because genuine blessing cannot arise from a distracted or closed spirit. A heart burdened by fear struggles to recognize the gifts already surrounding it. Imagine standing beside a spring in the early morning. The water has always been flowing. Yet only when you stop and truly notice it does gratitude naturally arise. Baruch is not an attempt to persuade God to become generous. It is the awakening of your own awareness to a generosity that has never stopped flowing. This understanding transforms the simple act of drinking water. Instead of consuming it absent-mindedly, you pause and recognize it as life being continually offered. Every sip becomes an opportunity to remember that existence itself is sustained by grace. Gratitude changes the one who receives long before it changes external circumstances. Ancient teachers understood that gratitude prepares the human heart for deeper communion. It quiets anxiety, softens pride, and redirects attention away from scarcity. A grateful spirit sees possibilities where fear sees limitation. That inner change becomes the true blessing. This is why Baruch belongs immediately after Ephatha. First, the heart is opened. Then the opened heart learns to bless. Only now is the foundation complete for the third word, a word that changes the blessing from something spoken about God into something spoken directly to Him. If today's revelation has already changed the way you see something as ordinary as a glass of water, imagine discovering the complete sequence exactly as it has been preserved. The complete study guide, including pronunciation, historical context, and daily practice, is available through the link in the pinned comment. If today's revelation has already changed the way you see something as ordinary as a glass of water, imagine discovering the complete sequence exactly as it has been preserved. The complete study guide, including pronunciation, historical context, and daily practice, is available through the link in the pinned comment. The third word is Ata, pronounced Ata. Its translation appears almost too simple. You. Yet this small Aramaic word carries one of the greatest transformations in the entire sequence. When Jesus prayed, he did not speak about God as someone distant or unreachable. His prayers reveal intimacy, closeness, and relationship. The language itself reflects this. Etiae is not an abstract theological idea. It is a direct address. It recognizes that the Creator is present, listening, and near. This changes everything about prayer. Many people speak beautiful prayers while imagining God somewhere far beyond the stars. Ancient Aramaic spirituality invites a different experience. Instead of projecting your words into an unknown distance, Ota turns your attention toward the immediate presence of the one who is already here. That is why the sequence could never begin with Ota alone. A closed heart cannot perceive divine presence. An ungrateful spirit rarely notices what has already been given. Only after Ephatha opens the inner senses and Baroo awakens gratitude does Ata become a living encounter instead of a religious formula. Consider how naturally conversations unfold between two close friends. There is no need to shout across great distances because both are already present. The same principle appears here. Ota reminds the one praying that the Creator is not absent, waiting to be convinced to listen. The relationship already exists. Prayer simply becomes the conscious participation in that relationship. Even a simple drink of water now takes on a new dimension. You are no longer blessing an object through empty repetition. You are acknowledging the presence that sustains every drop, every breath, and every heartbeat. Water becomes a reminder that divine life continually surrounds you. This is one reason the teachings of Jesus continue to feel so personal centuries later. They invite relationship rather than ritual. They replace distance with nearness. They replace fear with trust. Through one small Aramaic word, the entire direction of prayer changes. But the sequence is still incomplete. The heart has been opened. Gratitude has awakened. The relationship has become personal. One final Aramaic expression remains. It will reveal why water became one of the most powerful symbols of living life in the teachings of Jesus. Word Mayahayam, the fourth and final word in this sacred sequence, is Mayahayam, pronounced Mayahayam. Its literal meaning is living water. At first glance, it may sound like a poetic expression, yet for the people who spoke Aramaic, Mayahayam referred to something very specific. It described water that was alive because it moved. Flowing springs, rivers, and fresh streams were called living water because they carried continual renewal. Stagnant water could sustain life for a time, but living water symbolized something greater: constant movement, constant restoration, and constant participation in the life given by the Creator. This image appears throughout the Scriptures: water flowing from the wilderness, rivers bringing healing to the land, and the invitation to drink freely all point toward the same spiritual reality. Even in the Gospel of John, Jesus speaks of living water, while inviting people to receive a life that never runs dry. Although the Gospel is written in Greek, the conversation itself would have taken place in Aramaic, making Mayahayam the living expression behind those familiar words. Now the sequence begins to make sense. First came Ephatha, opening what had been closed. Then Baroo, awakening gratitude for what had already been received. Next come Ephatha, reminding the heart that the Creator is present and listening. Only then does Mayahayam appear. Notice how beautifully this unfolds. Living water is not merely something outside of you. It becomes a symbol of what begins flowing within you once openness, gratitude, and relationship have been restored. The physical water in your hands becomes a visible reminder of an invisible reality that Jesus continually taught through ordinary moments. Imagine lifting a simple clay cup beside a spring in Galilee. Before taking the first sip, you pause. Your heart is open. Gratitude has replaced hurry. You recognize the presence of God, and only then do you remember that this water represents life continually flowing from its eternal source. Drinking is no longer an unconscious habit. It becomes an act of remembrance. That is the beauty of Mayahayam. It transforms water into a daily invitation to live differently. Every morning, every meal, every ordinary moment. The water itself has not changed. The one who drinks it has. If you feel called to explore this complete practice with the original Aramaic pronunciation, historical background, and daily application, the complete study guide is available through the link in the pinned comment. This journey is only beginning. Tonight, we did not simply learn for ancient Aramaic words. We rediscovered a pathway that unfolds one step at a time. Just as Jesus often revealed truth patiently, naturally, allowing each lesson to prepare the heart for the next. None of these words was intended to stand alone. Each one opens the way for the one that follows. Everything begins with Ephatha. Before blessing anything around you, your own heart must become open. Openness is the doorway through which every deeper experience enters. Without it, even the most beautiful prayer risks becoming nothing more than familiar words repeated from memory. Then comes Baroo. Once the heart is opened, it begins to recognize what has always been there. Gratitude replaces complaint. Abundance replaces the illusion of scarcity. You stop asking whether life contains blessings and begin noticing that blessings have quietly surrounded you all along. The third step is Atta. Prayer changes completely when God is no longer imagined as distant. Relationship replaces distance. Trust replaces fear. You are no longer speaking into empty space. You are responding to a presence that has always been closer than your own breath. Finally comes Mayahayam. Living water is no longer merely the water held in your hands. It becomes the life flowing through your thoughts, your choices, your relationships, and your spirit. Every ordinary glass of water becomes a gentle reminder that divine life is never stagnant. It is always moving, always renewing, always inviting you to participate more deeply. Perhaps that is why Jesus so often taught through the simplest things. The greatest spiritual truths were never hidden in complicated rituals. They were waiting beside wells, around shared meals, within broken bread, and even in a single cup of water offered with an awakened heart. If one of these ancient words touched you today, don't let it remain only information. Carry it into your daily life. Let each sip of water remind you to open your heart. Live with gratitude, recognize the presence of God, and remember the gift of living water. If you feel called to continue this journey, the complete Aramaic study guide with the original pronunciations, historical insights, and practical daily practices waiting for you through the link in the pinned comment. Before you go, I would love to hear from you. Write one word of encouragement in the comments for someone who may be facing a difficult season today. It might be hope, peace, faith, strength, or any word that has encouraged your own heart. You never know whose life your message may brighten. Thank you for walking this ancient path with me. May peace, wisdom, and the light of the Creator accompany you until we meet again in our next journey.